currencies are debasing, debts are going up exponentially, and we are getting to the end of not just the US empire, but the whole world. Buy your precious metals, sit on them, and they will protect you and they will reward you.
Please join us for our next live stream Sunday, October 10th at 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll go over current events, past guests, and of course, gold and silver news. Once again, our next live stream will be Sunday, October 10th, 9 p.m. Eastern. See you then. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Silver Bullion Television, SBTV. I'm your host, Patrick Vieira. Housekeeping aside, if you are new to our channel or if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe, hit the bell to be notified on new updates, and give us a thumbs up. If you like what we do, we truly do appreciate your support, and thank you for it. Egon von Greyerz joins us today. Egon von Greyerz is the founder and managing partner of Matterhorn Asset Management and Gold Switzerland, based in Zurich, Switzerland. Egon forecasted the present problems in the world economy already back in 2002, and despite his start as a young banker in Geneva and thereafter finance director and vice chairman of a FTSE 100 company in the UK, Egon knows all too well why we should have assets outside of the banking system like gold. It's time to saddle up and silver up for Egon von Greyerz. Egon, welcome back to SBTV. How are you doing?
Patrick, good to speak to you again. Well, I'm doing all right. I mean, the world is in a mess, got to get worse. But, we have to cope with this too. The quality of an individual is how he copes with adversity. And we're going to have lots of adversity in the coming months and years, in my view. So we'll just have to cope with it and do the best we can.
Yeah, mess absolutely is the right word. Egon, I'd like to first start by asking you, how are things over in Switzerland regarding the pandemic?
Well, I move around in Europe, 3 different countries, because I'm Swiss and I'm Swedish. And I also have lived in the UK for a long time, so I have a house there, and quite a big part of my family, children and grandchildren are there. So, and therefore I can compare. And let me start with the best one, Sweden. And I spent part of the summer in Sweden. That there are no lockdown, no quarantine, no masks. And as you might have seen the statistics, Sweden is doing extremely well. With a very low level of COVID, relatively, and of course, if you remember, Sweden first at first they were praised for the way that they approached the pandemic with no lockdowns, etc., and then they caught up a bit for a while, especially the elderly, and then now it's lower than most countries. So they've had this same line all through, and therefore. That's, in my view, by far the best country. Still, when you're there, you don't notice it. Everybody lives normally, and there's not a lot of people ill. Switzerland is a little bit in between. You still wear masks here. You wear masks in restaurants, and now they started with actually restaurant. Recently, they started with you have to show the COVID certificate, vaccine certificate, to eat in restaurants, or a proof that you haven't got a test, which annoys me terribly. I mean, but otherwise, walking around the center in Switzerland, it's still easy, and it's not too serious here either. The UK is changing all the time, and it's, in my view, it's an absolute mess. Although they are now going to lighten up. But in my view, governments, except for Sweden, most governments have mismanaged this totally. And we know they're the ones with the highest vaccine percentages, like Israel, have got the highest quantity of Delta virus infected people also. So clearly, the vaccines are not working the way they expected. Although they're saying, of course, that you're not as ill with the vaccine. I don't know. Anyway, so sadly, I think it is... because of the way governments deal with this, it's a lot worse than it should be. And I hope that we're not going to have another year of this because, they show in Sweden, life just goes on. People are not dying in the streets. And Sweden has had the least slowdown in the economy because they haven't shut down everywhere. So that's, I think, the way. That's an example of how to cope with it. and I hope the rest of the world will catch on and stop having all these restrictions and limits and forcing people to have vaccines, etc. So it'll be an interesting few months ahead. But if they don't stop with all these restrictions, the world is going to have more difficulties.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's good to hear your perspective over in Europe. Egon, you wrote a recent article titled End of the U.S. Empire, Orwell's 1984 Newspeak, and Dirt Cheap Gold. And you pointed out a few quotes from George Orwell, 1984. One of them is the following: "Don't you see that the whole aim of Newspeak is to narrow the range of thought? In the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible because there will be no words in which to express it." Egon, why did you choose that quote, and how does it apply today?
Well, I think it's quite amazing that George Orwell wrote this, if I remember correctly, at the end of the 1940s, this book. And he has exactly forecast what we are seeing now. And it is Big Brother is watching. You know that a lot of your friends and colleagues are on interviewing on the internet. They've been shut down. For example, Greg Hunter is shut down on YouTube. Many are shut down on Twitter. I mean, there's incredible censor. You're not allowed to speak the truth. Or if the truth, as you see, deviates from the powers that be or the authorities or there's not even the authorities, because there's people like this social media that they decide, sure, that they have powerful people that are running these social media, but nevertheless, the censor I find totally unacceptable, but totally in line at the same time with 1984 or George Orwell's 1984. So we see it in so many areas of now society, and of course, I mean, the other thing is, the minorities rule now. The majorities are not allowed to express themselves if they have a deviating view, but the minorities can say anything and get away with anything, and nobody dares to clamp down on them or do anything with them. And I mentioned, I think in that article or another, I think in that one, that, this rewriting history, pulling down statues, taking censoring history books and rewriting history. How far? Of course, the world consists of wars and a lot of evil acts. We've had that throughout history, and people always have killed other people or mistreated other people. I'm not in any way saying that's a good thing to do. What I'm saying is that's what created Europe. That's what created the United States, for example. As you know, the Europeans went and took over the United States and basically killed a big number of the Indians, and the rest of them were put into limited areas. And that, if you rewrite history, not just the history of slavery, which is one that they have attacked especially now, but why don't rewrite then also that for example, I say this, but I know it doesn't work. That you take all the people who capture the U.S. now, the French, the English, the Spanish, etc., or not just the U.S., North and South America. So why don't pull all of those out and give the land back to the Indians? If you're going to rewrite history, how far back do you go? Do you go back to the Mongolians? Do you go further back? What I'm saying is, you can't rewrite history. Some history is wonderful and some of history is horrible. Nevertheless, that's how we've been formed. And what I'm saying now is that the minorities decide which part of history should be rewritten, and I find that totally unacceptable. But that's what's happening now, and the majority has no say in this. The minority decide. So it's an unpleasant way that we're developing right now in the world.
Yeah, I'd agree with almost everything you said, because it's kind of strange where you can't rewrite history, but you definitely can write your future. And it's ironic that the future being written is going back to repeating the history that they're trying to rewrite. So it's a bit odd there. But I'll move forward a bit. The article, that same article, End of the U.S. Empire, Orwell's 1984 Newspeak and Dirt Cheap Gold, it pointed out how empires end with the same signals today as it did some 2,000 years ago with Rome. What similarities do you see with the U.S. today and Rome 2,000 years ago?
Well, it's interesting. Of course, we know that the world moves in cycles. So these are natural cycles, and part of the economic cycle and political cycle is of course that you go from boom to bust always. That happens throughout history. That happens for a country. Even happens for companies. We can take many examples of companies that take Xerox or Kodak or whatever, that are dominant in their sector and then go to basically bust. And it happens with empires like the Roman Empire. So towards the end, of course, what happens is that they start overspending, and they start incurring massive deficits, and they borrow a lot of money, and then they have to debase the currency. And in the Roman Empire, in between 180 and 280 AD, the denarius went from 100% silver almost to 0% silver. So that was the devaluation in those days. And then you have the decadence also. Society breaks up totally, and moral and ethical standards disappear more or less. So that's typical for any society. But as I said, it is almost always in combination with a collapsing currency. And we can look at many other parts of history, but I think that from our point of view, from the economic point of view, that is typical, and that has happened throughout history. All major empires or major nations, economies collapse with the currency collapsing or debasing the currency for the simple reason that they're printing money that it has zero value, and zero value money means that the currency will be worthless. Because and that's what's has happened, as you know, in this last 100 years since 1913, and we can even just take since 1971. We all know, you and I, and most of the audience probably, that virtually all currencies have gone down 97 to 99% against real money, that is gold, since 71, and they're all down about 80% roughly since 2000. So the trend is accelerating, currencies are debasing, debts are going up exponentially, and we are getting to the end of not just the US empire, but the whole world. You look at China now and Evergrande, for example. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to see that everywhere, and it will lead to even more money printing. And of course, when the currency has 2-3% to fall now, all the currencies in the world, but that's 100% from now, and that will mean more money printing in the coming years, because that's the only way you can save all these over-leveraged companies. But of course, you're not saving them, because you're not solving a debt problem by printing more money. So they're not going to be saved. It's just part of a system that will break down, and it will break down dramatically in the next few years.
You touched on a few key words there: deficits, devaluations, and decadence, and other signs of the end of an empire. Egon, it seems week in and week out, we hear the Fed and what they say, and we look at the market's reactions and how the Fed will so-called save it all. And for over a decade, we've generally been in a QE environment. Now, getting back to those three words, would a QE environment perhaps encompass all of them, all these words: deficits, devaluations, and decadence?
Well, we know what it means. What it means is that for a short period, the world goes euphoric. Stock markets go up exponentially. Bond markets go up because interest rates go down to zero or even less. And the rich are getting dramatically richer, and nobody talks about the poor, but the poor are, of course, suffering in a way that we actually nobody sees that, because there's not, the papers seldom have long feature articles about the poor, but that sadly they are just getting a debt burden now, both personal debt burdens and of course, in the end, it's the people who have to carry the whole debt of the nations. We've gone from 100 trillion debt in 2000, roughly worldwide global debt, to 300 trillion today, and that has to be repaid. Of course, it'll never be repaid because there is no one who can repay it, and all other solutions in the end will lead to an implosion of this debt, because as I said before, we all know you can't create more debt to repay old debt, because if you add fake money onto fake money, what do you have? More fake money, and even if you call it a digital dollar, or even if you call it or digital yen, or if you put the old debt in a special form and forget about that, in the end, if debt is written off one way or another, it means that the underlying assets that this debt was backing was also going to be written off or implode, and that's what we're going to see in the next few years. I mean, it's going to be. I've been convinced about this for a long time. I thought it would happen faster than it has done. I thought after 2006-9 or that the world, was going to find it difficult to survive, but they did it skillfully. Now people can say they can do it again. I think now we're at a point when it's not going to work this time. We are now at an epic super bubble, or the epic everything bubble, in all areas of the economy and all areas of the world. So I think sadly now we're going to see now it's a question of we're going to pay the piper. And the world can't afford to pay the piper, and therefore the world will now see the consequences, which will be an implosion of debt and assets, and some difficult times ahead for all of us.
Yeah. Egon, do you think we have gotten sort of numb to all this money printing and loose money policies where not just the average Joe, but investors, money managers may not even know or understand the consequences, intended or unintended?
I don't think they understand at all. Nobody understands. I don't think central banks understand either. And even if they understood, they don't dare to tell us what they really fear. So now, coming back to investors, of course, investment today is not about value investing. It's not about long-term investing. It's not about wealth protection. It's all about short-term gratification, short-term gains. You buy today a stock and it goes up by 10% in a few days or weeks or whatever it is. You buy a property and you flip it and buy another one, and everything goes up. Of course, everything goes up in nominal terms because we have free money today. I'm not talking about just free money because interest rates are 0% or minus. In many countries in Europe, you can borrow 10-15-year money now for a house at 80 basis points, 0.8%, for example, or under 1%. That's crazy. It's like free money, and therefore people don't think about the fact that they're over leveraging and buying a much bigger house that then can really afford if interest rates go up. And I point out very often to people that I lived in the 70s. I was in the UK then for a long period, and I saw inflation at average of 15%. And I'm sure I've told you this before. My first mortgage was 21% in the early 70s in the UK. How many people can cope with that today? Nobody. We were in a different era, so we coped with it in those days. It was tough, but we coped with it. Nobody can cope with 5% interest rates in all of Europe, for example, because and so it'll be a shock. And of course, the world debt, 300 trillion. Every percent that interest rate go up, there'll be another 3 trillion interest.
Yeah.
Nobody, the world cannot afford that. And imagine if we really get the hyperinflationary type interest rates, 10%, 20%, then the whole world is bankrupt. Money printing will be just run wild, but it's not going to have any effect. So obviously they will create digital currencies. They will try this and that, but that's just the same fake money and fake system. It's just under another name. It's not going to make any difference.
Yeah. With everything you're saying, I mean, it's pretty obvious how the Fed intervention has really disconnected the markets from reality. But yet, mainstream media, financial news shows, they seem to think everything is fine and they reject that idea that the markets have disconnected. So I have to ask because people ask me as well, are gold and silver bugs wrong?
I think it's very simple, Patrick. The you know we are we are long-term investors in precious metals for the simple reason that over time we know that money has always been destroyed. We're now at an era where, as we said, that where debt is at levels which historically has never existed before on any measure, and therefore we know that these metals over time always will protect investors against the debasement of currencies and against the risk in the financial system. Now, short term, we've been into gold since 2002, $300. We went in a major way for ourselves and our clients. And that, obviously, we've not sold 1 ounce of gold since then, or 1 gram. New clients have come in. We first set it up for our own investors and ourselves, and then we opened it up for other investors. But and of course, what we see now, the type of clients we have were in wealth preservation. They don't worry about the price. They don't worry about the swings. They're not impatient about the price of gold, the fact that it doesn't go up. Remember, so since gold turned in '99 at $250, it made the bottom then. Between 1980 where it was 850 and then it went down to 250 in 99. Now, since then, the trend is clearly up, but it's not straight up for the simple reason that no market goes straight up except for Bitcoin or these highly speculative markets. But no normal market goes straight up. So we saw a quick run to 2011, and then we saw corrections for 4 or 5 years to 2015, 16, and then it started slowly going up again. Now the trend has turned. The trend turned in the last 3, 4 years, I would say. And so we had a quick run up now to over 2000 last August, a year ago. And now we've had a long correction. And of course, gold is not on a day-to-day basis reflecting the money printed at all. And that's what's disappointing people. People wonder what's happening. I've got my gold and money printing is going up at ridiculous levels and rate. But gold is not. But, I often show this graph that measuring gold in relation to U.S. money supply. So in relation to U.S. money supply, gold is as cheap today as it was in 1971 at $35 and in 2000 at almost $300. And today it's also, again, as cheap as that at almost $1,800. So gold is now massively undervalued in relation to the money created. That's partly because people have again piled into stock markets and other asset markets, partly because, as we know, as long as they can, the central banks, the BIS, Bank of International Settlement, the central bank, if you want, and also LBMA, the bullion banks, they are pushing the price of gold down whenever they can. There's a massive shortage in the market, and I'm absolutely certain that central banks don't have the almost 35,000 tons that they say they have. They've leased it to the market, or they have or they have sold it covertly, and they can never get that gold back that they have leased to the market. That's been bought by China or India or Russia, or whatever. And all the bullion banks have, which they then give to the central bank, is an IOU saying we owe you some physical gold. But they don't say, but we can never give it to you because it doesn't exist. We can never get hold of it. And if we ever get hold of it, it's going to be at a price which is 5 times or 10 times or whatever it will be, the current price. And this is why they're trying short term to push that market down. That works as long as there is still confidence in the world economy and people are buying other assets and not worrying too much about protecting. But as soon as risk starts to go up again, which it is, we're seeing it in China now with Evergrande. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, because with the leverage we have, you're going to have so many situations like that all around the world, which companies are virtually bankrupt because of massive leverage. And then when confidence evaporates, and people start thinking about gold, and I can sense it that it's happening in the market already. We don't see major buying in gold, but we're seeing that the interest and sentiment is shifting. And when people start wanting to have gold, and especially, of course, institutions today, as you know, there are only 0.5% of world financial assets in gold. Institutions have very little, but once there and a handful of institutions have started buying physical gold. But once they start thinking about inflation protecting their assets, and they will have to, and they're not going to go from 0.5% to 5 or 10%. It's enough that they go to 1 or 2%, and there won't be enough gold in the world at these prices. So instead, they will have to, instead of buying gold at $1,800, they might have to buy it at $10,000 or $50,000 to get the same amount of gold that they need to protect their assets. And that's going to happen in the next few years. So, you have to have patience if you're a value investor. You shouldn't worry about the short-term fluctuations. You shouldn't worry about the fact that some things go up faster than your asset. Just wait, be patient, and that this is, if you have precious metals, physical precious metals, that will protect you in the coming years when the whole financial system start imploding.
That's great advice. I just want to ask you, how is the supply doing in Europe? Has it gotten back to pre-pandemic levels yet?
Because of this, as I said, as you know, when we see these sell-offs in gold, it's not in the physical market. We haven't got our clients are not short-term speculators. They're not selling any gold. We see no selling in the physical market at all. So the selling is in the speculative market and primarily in the paper market, of course, which is the tail wagging the dog. And that tail they will lose that tail. The tail will be cut off because the gold market eventually will be a physical market only. So there's today no problem getting hold of physical gold, especially if you buy directly from the refiners, because the refiners have a constant supply from the mines. So therefore, today there's no shortages, not like last year. But last year, of course, was special because of the refiners, the Swiss refiners who refine 70% of the gold in the world, or the gold bars in the world. They had to shut down for a while, and then, of course, there was panic because it was hard to get hold of gold. So gold is in good supply still. That's going to change, as I said, when demand for physical changes, and that's not far away. Silver, on the other hand, is always harder to get hold of. There are shortages of silver. We can still, and I'm sure you're the same because we have good contacts with producers, we can still buy it, but we of course see in the retail sector, there are shortages all the time, and premiums on silver are very high. Now, in the wholesale sector, that you and we are dealing in, we can still buy and sell silver to investors at a very good price and a good margin. We don't charge the 25, 30, 40% margin or more that the retailers do. But nevertheless, yes, there will be shortages in silver. And of course, the industrial demand is increasing all the time.
So what do you tell people who are waiting for the price of silver or gold to go down to buy the physical? Should they wait, or should they understand that if it's available, just go ahead and get it? It's a long-term position.
Well, sadly, a lot of investors, I will say almost the majority of investors, like to buy high and sell low. That's the psychology of investment, but of course, the people who make money on investments, they are the ones who buy it when it's unloved and undervalued, like we did in 2002 when we bought gold at $300 and silver at $4 then. And that's the time that time you don't need to worry about the price. It's so cheap. It's never, if whether it goes down another 5% or let's say 10%, I don't think it will. But if it did, it doesn't matter because the upside is virtually unlimited, and the downside is incredibly limited, and therefore. Buy it when it's unloved and undervalued. Buy it when nobody's focusing on it. That's when you get a good deal. That's when you are actually buying at a very good price. But of course, anyway, people buy it not because they are going to make a turn and sell it when it goes up 20 or 50 or 100%. You should buy gold, put it away, forget about it, and that's the way you should think about gold, because it is the ultimate form of insurance that you have against a fragile financial world and a fragile world economy. And it is the best form of wealth preservation. There's no question about it. History tells us that 5,000 years is the only currency that has survived gold, and silver to a similar extent. So what will change? Nothing. Is just But you have to have patience. You mustn't buy today and expect it to make money tomorrow, like in other asset classes. It's been too easy to make money in the last decades, I would say. It's been too easy because all of this money printing and credit that has just pushed these markets up at artificially ridiculous levels. Buy your precious metals, sit on them, and they will protect you and they will reward you. I think precious metals will go up not just to cover purchasing power. I think relatively they will go up a lot more against all other investments.
All right, some great points, sound advice. Egon von Greyerz, before we wrap up, can you let our viewers know how they can find more of your work and about Matterhorn Asset Management and Gold Switzerland?
Yes, Patrick. So we help private individuals and institutions also to acquire and store physical gold and silver. We have in Switzerland the biggest private gold vault and the safest gold vault in the world in the Swiss Alps. Investors can just come to our website, which is goldswitzerland.com, and read all about us. And there are contact details there, and I'm happy to speak to them if they want to get hold of us or talk to me.
Okay, Egon von Greyerz, we thank you for your time, your honesty, and your genuine care for your fellow man. Appreciate the time you've given, and I hope we can do this again soon.
Patrick, always good to talk to you. Thanks very much.
That was Egon von Greyerz sharing his views on the markets in gold. To see more of Egon's work, please visit www.goldswitzerland.com. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the SBTV channel. Audio-only versions can be found on iTunes and Spotify.